everybody, it's me, Laura, and today we're going to be doing my Old Irish blessing in coins and clover. And I had a couple of projects planned for this one, but this was the one that won out. So I thought, let's go ahead and do it. This is a 5x7 frame, and all I'm doing is I'm taking all the inners of this out, and I'm going to be placing in my picture board, or my white picture board. Now this thing is a 5x7 piece, and I'll just place the backing on it for the heck of it, but I'm also kind of just latching it in there. And the reason for that is because I need to bring in my pencil, and I need to go ahead and just quickly give myself an outline as to what that looks like. Once I have that, I'm going to take the board out itself from that frame, and then from here I'm going to come in with my ruler, and I'm going to go about, I was thinking an inch, but I thought, no, that's too wide. So I went to a half an inch from the actual line that I had just drawn. And we're going to give a half of an inch border all the way around this board based off of the line I had just drawn. Now this area inside the smaller rectangle that's drawn on the board, this will be where we place our clay design. And I do this because we need to bring in the clay, and when we bring in the clay, I need to lay it over these particular graphite lines. And when I do, this way then I can go ahead and bring my tissue blade in and cut it exactly to where these particular lines are laid out for me. Now I'm going to go ahead and admit to a mistake here, so take note, everyone. This is what I'm going to be building off of, right? I have this wonderful Skinner blend. What I should have done before I laid this down on my board is I should have taken some scrap clay and ran it through my pasta machine on a number 4 or 6 setting, whichever one, preferably 4, but on my Atlas pasta machine. And then once I have that done, I'm going to go ahead and trim it up to where the graphite lines are, right? Then I'll take this particular Skinner blend, put that over the scrap clay, and conform it to the scrap clay. The reason why I should have done that, and the reason why I should do it, or when you go to do it, is because let's say, the thing is, this board is, I want to say it is kind of like compressed board. So it can, how do I say, expand and contract. So if it expands and contracts, once this clay is all baked, there's a possibility that the clay could crack. I like to put down the scrap clay, so the possibility of that goes down quite a bit. And for those of you who don't know, I've done quite a few different picture boards before. I have found, now the reason probably why I didn't do it here, this is a 5x7 piece, so it's a lot smaller, okay? So it's when you get really big, then you definitely have to have your scrap clay. However, that being said, I still, just out of practice and everything else, I should have put down the scrap clay. It really does make a huge difference. I've got pictures right now that I have done in the past that when I put the scrap clay down onto the board before I put down my background, if you will, it has not cracked. They have survived beautifully. I have never had a problem with them. And this is, even after I've laid down my epoxy glue, on the background to adhere it to the board. So please keep this in mind when you go ahead and create one of these boards. All right, so right here I'm bringing in some of my clay and I'm doing the transfer technique. And if you want to know how I did this particular transfer, just go back about 2 months, and I did one on the polymer clay transfer and storage thing. Go and check out that video. It will go into detail on how I made the liquid transfer here with the words. But right here, this clay though, this white clay, is down on a piece of freezer paper. It was, I want to say, rolled out with the freezer paper attached to it on your thinnest setting, so on a number 9. And then I just attached in the words, I rebaked it, and then I'm just trimming it up. The nice thing with having the clay this thin is you can do this. You can actually use the scissors and cut away any excess you don't want. Okay, so here I'm bringing in my teaspoons, or I should say my measuring spoons, and this is actually the teaspoon one, not the tablespoon, because it's too big when you get to the table. And I'm using, yes, some of my Dove chocolate papers again, and I'm just like, okay, we're going to go ahead and create this little teaspoon form, and I make 4 of them all together. All right, so right here I'm bringing in my light green clay and I'm covering up my tinfoil forms. This clay was rolled out on a number 5 setting on my Atlas pasta machine, and I'm just going to cover each of these little tiny tinfoil forms with this clay. I am now going to go ahead and bring in some of my dark clay, and I'm going to be using one of my knot cutters from last time that I had used it, and I just love this thing. I can't seem to get away. Look at this thing. I love this thing. I just can't get away from it. So I'm making a number of these, and when I do, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to bring in my Color Shift green flash paint, and we're going to go ahead and just lightly brush over the top of each of these little pieces that I cut out with that paint, giving it kind of a nice highlight. This is why I love doing, having this dark green and then using that Color Shift. Oh, I just get the shivers. But it just makes such a difference on the dynamic that it presents in the piece itself. Okay, so I have not applied the paint to these pieces, but I wanted to show you here my cut. Did you see that? I cut off the top part of this. Right here, this is the full piece right here, right? So just cut off that first little section or rows of just that, of this lattice or lace work. Once you have that, this is going to be the pieces that are going to go over our little tinfoil clover petals, okay? Petals, that's what I'm going to call them, petals. And this way then it'll create a really neat dynamic. I think you guys will really like it. I'm again coming in here with that Color Shift paint that I just get the shivers over. And I'm going to put just lightly, just a little brush of that paint right over the top. All right, once that lace-like lattice has kind of dried, or knotwork has dried on that clay that I had just used the paint on, we're going to start taking 2 of these pieces and we're going to place it over one of the little green forms or tinfoil forms that I had going on. And notice here, I just kind of, right at the point there, I just let it touch, okay? And I just love this really dramatic and dynamic effect. Once I have that knotwork placed onto the little green covered tinfoil forms, I'm then going to create a few darker green balls like I have right here. I'm going to take each of those balls then, I'll turn them into little teardrops, and then I'll bring in my burnisher and we're just going to kind of push down and drag it. It makes me think of the, how do I put it, the finger smears in my Zentangle video, but what can I say? It's similar. I'm just using a tool here, that's all, instead of my finger. But right here, you could tell I brought up 3 of these little teardrops, and we're going to place these on top of one of our little tinfoil forms. And I loved how that looked. It was just such a beautiful kind of look when you used all of these elements together. All right, so now we're going to start bringing our picture together, and I'm bringing in my liquid Sculpey here, and I'm using my finger. I could have used a toothpick, but I'm like going, oh, whatever. So I just smeared a bunch on the back of this, and then I'm going to place this down onto my picture, onto my background, and I'm putting my little blessing at an angle. I just thought, yeah, that'd be fun. So I'm doing that, and then I'm also bringing up some of that lattice knot work that I had just done previously, and I'm going to cut it into 3 sections here lengthwise. And I've got the outside edges and I got the middle. What we're going to deal with here is not the middle part, but the outside edges. So I really liked, I don't know, I just liked how it framed up so well on the blessing. And that's what I'm going to do here. I thought, let's go ahead and put one piece on one end, one on the other, and then have another piece butt up against it going the other direction. And we'll do this all the way around this plaque. Once I got this lattice-like knotwork all the way around this plaque, I decided let's go ahead and bring in then our little tinfoil forms I had pre-made and get them positioned onto our picture. And I was like, do I go in a cross position or an X? And I finally went with the X position. It just seemed to make the most sense. And I'm coming in with a little dark green ball. This is 5/8 of an inch in diameter, and I'm just going to drop this right down into the middle, and then I'm going to bring in a fairly large ball tool and then just push down on that dark green ball. Once I have that dark green ball kind of indented in, I brought in some light green clay, and I thought let's make a little smaller ball and just let that sit right in the center in that little dark green. Now you might have to, take a little bit off, kind of adjust it until you get it to the size where you like it best. Once I had that in, I went back to the lattice, the knotwork that we had made, because I had some of those middle sections left over. I thought, let's use this. I mean, waste not, want not, right? And I took one of them and I thought, let's cut it in half. Cut this in half, and then I thought, I needed something over where that clover was coming. See, and I needed a nice little design. I thought this would work well. It would also tie in to the other part of that lattice kind of going around the tinfoil form. Once I had that lattice kind of covering up the very bottom of that clover, I decided to go ahead and do that with each of the other clovers that I had on the board. Now, when I was putting this clover together, I thought I need to go ahead and put my stem down, right? I mean, because clovers have little stems. So right here, I'm making this little snake, and I'm just going to kind of wind it around and turn it into a little bit of a curl at the very end there. I like curling up my vine work or any kind of stems I get. To me, it just lets the eye flow a little bit when you go to look at it. And so that's what I'm doing right here. At this point in my project, I was really starting to get into this thing, because when I first started this, I thought, oh, man, I don't know if this is going to turn out right, but it turned out better than I had expected. And what I decided at this point, I thought, let's go ahead and make some more clovers a little bit bigger. And I brought in my burnisher, and this was so much fun because, yeah, I had made the smaller ones, but usually it's one stroke and you're done, right? This, I'm bringing in my burnisher, and I'm really coming into this thing, and I'm putting more than one little stroke down, and I'm creating this little circular thing on the very bulbous end, and it looked beautiful. I loved it. I was like, yes, yes, yes. I love this thing. I love it, y'all. And we're going to take all 3 of these pieces, and we're going to put them together, forming up another little bit of a three-leaf type clover. And when I did this, I was like, okay, how am I going to use this? So I twisted up the ends, and I thought, let's take this into the larger clover and put it in the area where I was like, there's not really anything going on here. It seems like it's missing something. And when I did, it turned into, it's pretty large. I mean, this clover is fairly large, and I'm putting 4 of them all the way around, right? But it seemed to fill in a gap that just to me seemed to be wanting, right? And in doing so, it just was so much fun at this point. So from there then, I decided to go back to my plaque and then use my liquid Sculpey to make sure all of the pieces around on that plaque were firmly set in. All right, so I kept going back to this cutter. I couldn't get it out of my system. I rolled out some more of my darker clay here, and this was rolled out on that #1 setting. I wanted to really make sure I get that imprint of what that cutter provided. And in doing so, of course, I had to make more of these. I wound up where I used them up and then I had to make more. So here I've already applied all of that paint, and then we're going to cut it on the width side, if you will. So look at how this turned out. Oh my goodness. And then I came in and I took and cut at an angle on one end from that lattice knotwork. This would then go in, and I just loved this detail. I thought some of these components to this clover could be used all on their own, but I placed it right in the middle there on that one leaf or petal on my 3-leaf clover here, and it added in the detail that I absolutely not only needed, but I just loved it. It just, yay, just sung to me, Anyway, I placed it back in, and it really tied in so well to the rest of it. I went back to these other little pieces, did the same thing yet again. Okay, so in playing with this cutter, I took some gold mica shift clay, and I thought, let's go ahead and cut out some of this with that same cutter again. And we're going to use this in the regard of where I needed to make some coins. I wanted to make some little leprechaun coins, add them in, get into the spirit of the thing, right? Anyway, a terrible, terrible voice. Anyway, I'm using also my metallic Incan type paint here, and I'm going to go right over that gold clay with it. And when I do, I'm going to bring in my circle Kemper cutters, everything from the very, very small itty bitty one to the little bit more medium range size, if you will. And I'm just going to take and cut out some little circles from this lattice. These little circles will then serve as my little gold coins. And I thought, what a wonderful way to use this, and to keep that same lattice lacework type pattern in the mix. At this point, I decided to bring in some of that light green clay yet again, create a few more balls, and then we're going to go ahead and turn those into teardrops, and then use my burnisher to press down through the center and give me that little kind of clover petal. Once I have these tinier light green petals, or clover petals together, we're going to go ahead and place them into the larger design. Now at this point, my clover, my large clover had a lot of dark green in it, and I really needed to break it up more. And that's why I'm bringing in that little light green petal type look, because I thought I need something to break up all of this dark green. I had so much of it. So I placed that right in the center between the other two larger petals on my larger clover in the main clover design, and it seemed to really break that up, bring that design more into like, okay, I'm not completely just dark, 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 no. It brings that little lighter element that you really need. At this point, I have decided to go ahead and let you guys watch my hands talk as I put down some fun little gold coins into this design, using a little bit of my liquid Sculpey to adhere them in, as well as creating a few more little vines and throwing in a few little light green balls that I will then indent using my knitting needle to make room for some fun little rhinestones later. After I had put the gold coins right around the plaque on the outside, I thought I needed to add in a few more. So I placed up two right in that bar area, right underneath the title. And then I decided to go ahead and add in a few more tinier little gold coins onto the plaque itself. Once I had those gold coins in place, I decided I needed to add in some more vine. I mean, I had it along the bottom, which is fine, but I thought I need to really tie it into the rest of the picture. So I made a few more longer vines and I added them in here and there, along with some more of the gold coins. Once I had the coins and the vine work in place, I decided to come in with some little green balls. I wanted to add in just a little bit more detail using that light green, and so I brought some of those into the main clover. I used my knitting needle to indent each of those, and then I moved on and I thought, let's go ahead and add in some green and light green, so like dark green and light green checker around the picture piece of this. I I like to have some borders sometimes, and in this case I really needed to. So I had a light green and a dark green put together. I had cut these two pieces in half. The light green and the dark green was rolled out on a number 2 setting on my Atlas pasta machine, and then I cut that in half and I get my stack. From here I cut a slice, I put it through my pasta machine on a number 3 setting that time, and then I start to cut off I'll start to cut off the end here, and then when I cut off the end, I'll go ahead and start creating my checker. Now, as you all know, I like to build up a nice row of checker. Once I have that row together, I thought I need to put this down, and for the first time, I've never really done this before, but it made sense. Bring in my liquid Sculpey and place it right along the edge of my picture piece. And then this way, then I can tie in that checker very easily without any problems whatsoever. Now you might have noticed here, right here, I'm cutting down and I'm making a little point on the end of that checker. I'm not going to have the checker go all the way around this thing. I could if I wanted to, but in this case I decided, no, let's have a little more fun. Add the checker around, but then to taper it off. So I'll take and make a row and place it right along the edge of that clay, and then I'll cut into it where it almost comes off to a very much a point. And it just gives a really nice little dynamic to that checker kind of border thing. At this point, I wanted to go ahead and do something with my corners. So I took another piece of that lattice lace knotwork stuff, and I thought, let's go ahead and create these little triangle pieces off of it. So I cut it crossways on that piece, and it didn't want to come apart very good. I tried really hard, and I did get one really nice piece. I had to do this a number of different little times, but once I got these little tiny kinds of triangle, I decided to go ahead and put them right on the corners of my picture. With my corners in place, I decided to add in one more little feature to my picture, and that was using my knitting needle to go ahead and make little indents all over on my light green clay. I just thought it'd be a nice little fun feature to add in, and I'm certainly glad I did, because that piece there in the center of my clover I will fill in with some fun rhinestone. At this point, I have baked my picture and I'm using my blade here just kind of, and it came up pretty easily to bring up my clay piece from the backing, right? And I thought, let's go ahead and take the backing off. And I had some liquid Sculpey that kind of ran over. So I just quickly took that off with my blade. And then I'm going to bring in my rhinestones and I'm just going to start filling in all those little light green dots that I had an indent in. Now, just as a reminder here, if your fingers cannot get those little rhinestones into those little holes, use your little waxy tip. It really does solve a lot of problems. Right here, I couldn't even reach it because my vine work was in the way. Now that I have my rhinestones in, I decided to bring in just a little bit more of that acrylic paint that I had. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of little areas with the green and the gold and just make it all look really fun. Now that I got my picture completed, I decided I need to go ahead and attach it into my board. I'm using a little E6000. I decided not to go with my super glue like I usually do. And I'm just placing it in a few little areas. I'm not placing it all over that back side. The nice thing about using the E6000 was I could arrange it. I could get it in place the way I wanted it to. Super glue will attach in like really fast. And if you're not real good at trying to figure out, oh, where's my line here so that it'll be in the proper place, use the E6000. It's a better element. It's a great epoxy glue, but it gives you time also to put it onto your board in the right positioning. You've all also noticed that I've brought in my comet here. I'm erasing up all of my little graphite marks around on the board. Once I have this cleaned up the way I want it, I'll put it in its frame and we'll have a completed little Old Irish blessing piece. All right, so this is my framed piece of the Old Irish blessing in coins and clover. Please use this for study and reference. And if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. I'm always wondering what you're thinking. Otherwise, I am sending out my biggest hugs to each of you, and I hope you have a fantastic and eventually here a happy St. Patrick's Day.